go ahead and skip ahead a minute or so, and we'll go ahead and get started. Biggest news for the Thursday night game is probably on Philly's side. Their lead running back, Kenny Gainwell, is out for this game. So how the Eagles' backfield shakes out is anyone's guess. We assume DeAndre Swift will lead it. But Rashad Penny could mix in. Boston Scott could mix in on a short week. Anything goes. Right? Teams have to simplify the game plan with less time to prepare. They have to utilize potentially other players to account for the short week. There's a lot of factors at play. Lots of different factors that you have to consider. So we'll see what happens there. But there should be a good opportunity for fantasy points scored in this game, at least from the horses, the guys that you expect week in, week out. Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, firing all those guys up with plenty of confidence if you have any of them. And then, of course, for the Vikings, you are firing up Justin Jefferson every single week. That is without question. I think you're firing up Jordan Addison tonight as well. For Philly, James Bradbury is out due to a concussion. So that's their number 2 cornerback. You imagine Darius Slay will shadow Justin Jefferson. But Philly's depth takes a big hit with their other starter opposite Slay out for this game. So I am firing up Jordan Addison. You're firing up TJ Hawkinson, of course. Kirk Cousins is a super flex play, although his track record in primetime games is well accounted for at this point, well known at this point. So do so with caution. If you have no other clear-cut option, then of course you have to go that way. But if you do, probably want to think about pivoting given the track record. If you drafted DeAndre Swift and you don't have clear-cut options as far as your running backs, if you went 0 RB and DeAndre Swift was one of your 0 RB targets, you can fire him up tonight with modest confidence. I wouldn't say significant confidence, but probably modest confidence. He has to be their most talented runner out of the backfield. And then, of course, you could expect to see Jalen Hurts maybe pick up the slack a little bit as well on the ground, a little bit more than what he usually would do. So I would say, around 50 rushing yards tonight for Jalen Hurts is not out of the realm of possibility. What's going on, Crumply Heads? And again, happy Thursday. Happy week 2 of the NFL season. If you have start-sit questions that pertain to tonight's matchup, we will, of course, make sure we talk about those, get through your situation. Again, you're starting all the obvious guys, of course. Hurts, Brown, Smith, Goddard for Philly, Jefferson, Hawkinson for Minnesota, and I'm firing up Jordan Addison as well with Bradbury out due to the concussion. I know that KJ Osborne ran ahead of Jordan Addison in week 1 as far as snaps, but Addison was targeted at a higher or at the same rate, I believe, as KJ Osborne on significantly fewer routes run. So they're going to look to get the rookie a little bit more involved moving forward, game by game. That probably happens as early as tonight with no James Bradbury for Philly. So I'm perfectly fine firing up Jordan Addison. The one guy you maybe want to shy away from is Kirk Cousins in super flex leagues. Not great in primetime games historically. Of course, if you don't have any other clear-cut options, you kind of have to just grin and bear it, probably fire him up. But if you've got any other viable pivots, a Jared Goff, a Brock Purdy at this point, even you may want to consider that. Couple other things from around the league. Just looking at the wire, I already talked about how Kenny Gainwell has been ruled out. For the Packers, Aaron Jones, Christian Watson are not practicing, so their availability for Sunday is in question. The big one is probably the health of Austin Eckler. He did not practice for a second straight day, and so his availability for Sunday's game is officially in question. If you see a guy like Austin Eckler get a day off on Wednesday, you don't think too much of it. It could just be maintenance. The fact that there's no practice Thursday, now it's officially on the radar with Austin Eckler. I did say on Tuesday, if you have Austin Eckler, then prioritize Joshua Kelly on waivers. I wasn't as worried about adding him if you didn't, or if you don't have Austin Eckler. So if you have Eckler, I hope you prioritized Kelly. He's probably a viable spot start this week. If Eckler can't go, it's a tough matchup against the Titans, but he should see potential RB1 usage, and he looked pretty good in the opportunities that he got on Sunday. This is only if you have Austin Eckler. I would not have prioritized Kelly if you didn't have Eckler on your roster. Jacoby Myers is going to miss this week. He's in concussion protocol, hasn't practiced yet. Probably is, from the looks of how it played out on Sunday, he's going to miss this week for safety precaution, as it should be. We're not going to have Deontay Johnson this week, but he declared himself day-to-day earlier. Saw that on X, previously Twitter, that Deontay Johnson is declaring himself day-to-day. So maybe things are feeling a lot better after Sunday. Probably still can't go this week, but we could be looking at a sooner return for Deontay than originally expected. And then the big dogs at tight end, Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews, are both practicing. So we'll continue to monitor that. And Jerry Jeudy will be on a snap count. I'm not firing up Jerry Jeudy if he's on a pitch count, especially coming off a hamstring injury. Let's let him sit on the bench for one more week, see how he does, see how he looks, make sure he gets through that game unscathed. If he's able to make a big play, so be it. Good for him. I'll be happy about that, but it'll be on my bench. I'll look to fire him up back into my lineups week 3. But good to see that Jerry Jeudy sounds like he's nearing a return. Sounds like he's close to playing. If they do ultimately decide to hold him out, it's not out of the realm of possibility. But the fact that he could be, they're alluding to, he could be on a pitch count this week is great news for the shorter wait time as far as expected coming back from the injury than opposed to the long term. We were originally thinking Jeudy might miss multiple weeks to start the season. He might only miss a couple at most. So feeling good about that one. Those are the big names, at least as far as what is currently on the injury report. So, of course, continue to monitor that situation. If you have any of those guys, ideally you grab the handcuff. It's a running back. And if you have, potential other pivots at wide receiver with the injuries there. Because I'm not rushing to the waiver wire yet, not in 10, 12 team leagues for guys like Marvin Mims, who will, in theory, replace Jerry Jeudy, even though it was guys like Lil Jordan Humphrey for the Broncos on Sunday. That's a mess. Hopefully you have other wide receivers to pivot to for if you have a wide receiver injury. Hopefully you have the handcuff for the running back if you have a running back injury. Am I nervous Philly loses, Alex? Not really. To be completely honest. The Eagles are at home. The Vikings have some injuries along the offensive line. The Eagles have some injuries as well. Gainwell's out. James Bradbury is out. They're missing some important pieces. Reed Blankenship is out. They're starting safety. So the Vikings might have a little bit more success throwing the ball in this game than they did when they played the Eagles last year. But I think the Eagles are the better team. The Vikings got beat at home last week by Tampa Bay, who took a big downgrade in quarterback this offseason, going from Brady to Baker Mayfield. Still, they went in there and got it done. On a short week at home, I'm not overly worried. Not overly worried. Should be a good game. I meant to check the weather. It looks like it's going to be a really nice night in Philly. It's currently about 74 degrees, no precipitation in the forecast. So, if you have Jake Elliott, you can fire him up with confidence. No concerns as far as conditions for the pass catchers. There were a lot of bad weather games in week 1. No issues tonight in that regard. Should be clear skies. Nice forecast. Should be a good game overall. The Eagles should win. I would imagine, the better team at home on a short week is at an advantage. That being said, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, these are good weapons that can exploit the injuries that Philly is currently dealing with on defense. All right, I can get to the rest of the chat. As you guys know by now, I do get the members first, but then I get to everybody else in order. So happy to start taking those questions now as we get ready for Thursday Night Football and the kickoff to week 2. If you have start-sit questions that don't pertain to tonight, I will probably kind of request that you try to come back Saturday or Sunday when we have full information, when we have Friday practice reports, when we have vibes going into the weekend. Once the team has gotten through their week of preparation, that's when we can provide the best thought process when it comes to the 2 players or 3 players that you might be between as far as start sit. If it pertains to tonight, of course, we'll get to it. Otherwise, I'm mostly going to encourage start sit questions that are only pertain to Sunday and Monday. Try to come back for one of my start sit live streams over the weekend, Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern, Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern. I will be here talking through start sit help. That will be when I can give you most likely my best answer. But all right, let's get into it. As far as Kareem Hunt, would he be signed by now? It's a couple of things, right? I mean, the running back market is being completely disrespected right now. Hunt is 27 years old. He's probably not like completely done, but relative to what he can give a team at this point in his career, he's probably hoping and holding out for more money than a team is willing to give him. They're probably not willing to give Kareem Hunt more than a couple $1 million on a 1-year deal, and he probably wants a little bit more than that. He's earned the right to ask for more than that based on his career success, but at this point, you're paying for a player that you're getting now. You're not trying to pay for a player when that player was, 3-4 years younger. You're not getting that version of him anymore. He probably is holding out hope that he can get that money. It's not going to happen. If he's able to settle for a smaller amount, then sure, he may end up in a Baltimore, in an Indianapolis. But also, how much does Kareem Hunt have left in the tank? Okay, so this is a PPR start sit question that does involve Alexander Mattison, who's playing tonight. I'm actually not playing Mattison tonight unless I have no other better options. And for me, you have better options here. Let me make one thing clear. Brandon Ayuk is not involved in start sit questions anymore. you just start him. You find a way to start Brandon Ayuk in your lineup. If it's between two other obvious wide receiver ones, then, petition the commissioner next year to add a starting wide receiver spot to your starting lineup. Brandon Ayuk is a bona fide, clear-cut starter in all formats, in all situations, over lots of other players that you would maybe not have expected coming into the season. He's a clear and obvious start now. We can eliminate him from start sit questions, in my opinion. He's that dude. The other guy I would probably go with here is probably Algier. I would probably go Algier. The Falcons are at home. They want to run the football. He might not get as much work as he got week 1, but he's going to stay involved. And the Falcons, if this is their game plan and this is how they intend to be competitive and win games, they're going to have to keep feeding the rock to their running backs, because they play a much more difficult opponent this week than they did last week when Green Bay comes into town. So I'm going Ayuk and I'm going Algier. I'm not big on Madison tonight. I think it's a tough matchup against that Philly front. And coming off a short week where he got most of the work last week, I would imagine Ty Chandler gets a little bit more involved. Short weeks are weird, and in this situation, it feels like an easy fade. Now, of course, Madison could end up with, 10 touches and a score and come through for you with an RB2 performance, but it feels like that might be his ceiling. I don't think the ceiling is very high for Madison tonight. So I would go Ayuk and I would go Algier. And for me, Ayuk is in my lineup no matter what moving forward. No matter what. But yeah, I would sit Alexander Madison tonight if I have other viable options. I'm just not crazy about the matchup. Someone dropped Terry McLaurin. This is just okay. This looks like this is a very thin league. Clearly, this is just a really thin league. I mean, yes, drop Christian Kirk for him. Sure. Sorry, I was trying to see if there was an inactive list that had been released yet. I guess we're not going to get that for it might be another 20 minutes or so. I'd be curious to see tonight. I believe the Eagles are going to make Rashad Penny active, but I'll be curious to see like who gets the most. I would assume Swift gets the most touches, but I'm curious to see if Boston Scott outpaces him tonight. That could make Penny an outright drop in all formats if he isn't already. Would I trade Christian Kirk and David Montgomery for Waddle? I mean, yes, in a vacuum. Who are your other running backs? But yes, in a vacuum. And then, yeah, as far as Kareem Hunt, I'll throw Leonard Fournette in there as well. Although Fournette might be a little bit more cooked than Kareem Hunt. Teams feel confident that they can find an undrafted guy or a diamond in the rough super late in the draft that they can kind of take this time to mold and develop, whether it's on the practice squad or as the backup running back. and that over time they can eventually contribute to the point where they don't need to spend that money on a 27-year-old running back with a lot of wear and tear on the tires. I mean, in today's landscape, for better or worse, it almost feels like the running back situation is toxic. Teams just don't want to invest in running back because it just, they look at the numbers, they crunch the numbers, they look at the data, and it just indicates that it is a detriment to your salary cap, no matter how you slice it. And teams get all caught up in that, rightfully so, when it comes to team building. And so when you have these veteran running backs who are asking for more than, Kareem Hunt, is he worth $4 or $5 million in a vacuum? Sure. In today's NFL, teams will probably be like, we'll give you like 1.5. We're not going to give you more than $2 million for a 1-year contract. We're not even sure we want to do that. It's just how the league has developed. Yeah. Could teams in theory use a guy who's a veteran back there who just knows how to just handle backfield duties to some degree? Sure. They're just holding out hope that they can find guys way younger and way cheaper who they can kind of bring along, who can eventually contribute if they can't right now. It sucks for Kareem Hunt. It sucks for Leonard Fournette. It sucks for other aging running backs who are aging, they are kind of aging out of the NFL at this point. But that's the nature of the beast. What's going on, Iron? Good to see you. The Eagles should be fine tonight. Tough matchup week 1. A lot of people are raising concerns about the Eagles' performance week 1. I'm not too worried about it. Obviously, it was sloppy. Not their best performance on offense by any stretch of the imagination, but the weather wasn't great. They were on the road. Bill Belichick is still a good defensive coach. I think they right the ship a little bit tonight at home. Perfect conditions weather-wise. An opponent that I think the Eagles feel confident about facing. I think they'll be all right. I think if you have your Eagles, you start them all with confidence, and I would say that includes DeAndre Swift. He should see enough work tonight to right the wrongs of what happened last week. Should be fine. And Arizona's not bringing anybody in over the age of 24. There's no way. I'm a little surprised they still have James Conner. They're probably not going to, again, teams don't want to pay a running back. But I mean, if they cut James Conner would have a market from at least 20 teams. You would think they could get a 7th round pick for James Conner. I don't know why they don't just do that. You're full-blown tanking. Why hang on to a 28-year-old running back who can still produce, who is still going to be, he has at least one more year in him. A contending team should absolutely be like, we'll give you a 7th for James Conner and your 7th in 2026. Those types of weird random trades happen all the time. If you're not sure about starting Dak it's Dak, Cousins, or Carr. The New Orleans Saints, well, let me start with Cousins. Cousins gets Philly tonight in prime time. His track record there has not been very good. Dak gets the Jets at home. That's a good defense. They played very well on Monday night against the Bills. Carr goes on the road in the division to play the Panthers. I guess I would go Cousins, Iron. I would probably just pinch my nose and hope for the best and hope that he's able to, shake off that history, the what's the word I'm trying to think of? Just his history on in primetime games. His MO, right? We expect you hope Kirk Cousins can kind of overcome that, have a good game. The Eagles are missing a couple of guys in their secondary. Between Cousins, Carr, and Dak, I would probably just fire up Cousins and hope for the best. I think that's your move. Fire up Cousins over Carr, fire up Cousins over Dak. Yeah, and can you start Swift tonight? Thank you for providing other guys that you like have available to you. I mean, Najee, Dubs, is that Michael Thomas? I'm not starting Jerry Jeudy, who is on a pitch count. I mean, between Swift and Najee Harris, Najee was not good, but again, the Steelers as a whole were awful against the 49ers. And once again, Matt Canada is under a microscope for his ability to actually run an NFL offense and whether it's something that he can actually do. I would probably start Swift tonight over Najee. I would probably start Swift tonight over Najee. The Steelers have another tough matchup. They're hosting the Browns, so at least they're at home again, but it's a division opponent who has a good defense. I would be a little worried about Najee. I would probably go Swift. I would probably go Swift. Cobb and Randall Cobb and Dynasty. Randall Cobb and Dynasty can go. I mean, the reason he went to New York was to tag along with Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers is done for the season. Cobb is not a spring chicken himself. How is Randall Cobb like 34 at this point? He's 33. I mean, yeah, you don't feel good about Zach Wilson or whoever else they might bring in throwing the football consistently, having any type of success with any of these wide receivers. Cobb is at best the wide receiver 4 in that offense, maybe the wide receiver 3 some weeks. And it's expected to, it's now a passing attack that has taken multiple steps backward. I'm not worried about Randall Cobb in Dynasty. He's an easy drop for me. I don't think there's any need to hold on to him. I wouldn't worry about too much about Randall Cobb. Again, I can the best I can give with a start the best start sit advice I can give is over the weekend. This one's relatively clear cut for me. Between Jeudy or Breece, the answer is Breece. Breece looked great on Monday night. Jeudy is going to be on a pitch count at best if he plays. Breece 100%. Drop Gibson for Moss. That's an interesting one. Gibson's at his lowest point after what, a four touch outing. Week 1, He fumbled. He fumbled on one of his attempts. Didn't get anything going. Moss, of course, has appeal this week because he's probable to return from the injury. He broke his wrist a few weeks ago in training camp, but he's trending toward playing, and he's probably trending toward leading this backfield. So obviously, Moss has more appeal than Antonio Gibson right now. I would probably still hold Antonio Gibson. We only have 1 week to go off of in the form of a sample size. It's not a good sample for Antonio Gibson. Turned the ball over, only got a handful of touches. But this is a guy who, it's been a couple years at this point, but we've seen him provide low-end RB1 production on a per-week basis. That's not likely to happen anymore with Brian Robinson as the lead guy, but he's going to remain involved in the passing game, in the receiving game. Maybe not to the extent that we want, but I do think the talent wins out here for me. Gibson over Moss from a talent perspective, and also from a situation perspective. We don't know what's going to happen with this Colts backfield long term. Yes, we expect them to trade Jonathan Taylor, but do they sign another player, which ultimately completely messes up the depth chart of this backfield? Do they go back and forth and just ride the hot hand? Are there going to be games where Deion Jackson is just outperforming Zach Moss, or is Evan Hull going to come back off IR and carve out a role in this backfield? Do they sign another player to try to just get them through this season? These question marks, that's the one saving grace with Antonio Gibson. None of those questions apply to him. I would hold for one more week. Hope that Gibson can turn it around. Washington plays Denver this week in Denver, so you're leaving Gibson on the bench, but there might be an opportunity with a little bit more neutral game script in this game for him to get involved as a pass catcher. You're obviously leaving him on your bench, but I would wait on Gibson. I would not pick up Moss for Gibson. Okay, you were okay. So for Mecole Hardman, how old is Hardman at this point? He probably is a drop if you need the roster spot. Still only 25 years old, but yeah, I mean his ceiling is incredibly low at this point with no Aaron Rodgers, and the Jets seem to be scared to throw the ball deep with Zach Wilson. Mecole Hardman is a speedster. I mean, it's not a good connection. Yeah, I would say Hardman's a drop. I mean, Allen Lazard is a drop in redraft leagues, so I think it's fair to say that Mecole Hardman, if you need the roster spot, is a drop in dynasty leagues. Mostert or Addison. So yeah, this applies to tonight, of course, with Jordan Addison going tonight. I would probably go Mostert. I mean, I tend to lean the running back in this situation. Addison does make it a little bit more enticing in full PPR. This is a good Dolphins offense, man. I mean, they're getting to the point where we maybe just don't worry about their matchup. We just, we just plug them in. We just plug the starters in. And Raheem Mostert is the starter. I know Devon Achane practiced in full on Wednesday. I think he practiced in full today, but he practiced in full all last week, and they still made him inactive. They still did not go into that game last week, the Dolphins, with Devon Achane as an option. It was pretty much just Raheem Mostert and Salvon Ahmed. Even if Achane is made active, it's going to be his first career game against a Bill Belichick defense. I mean, Mostert's going to continue to see most of that work. I would go Mostert over if Addison. I want Addison in my lineup tonight because the Eagles are down multiple pieces in their secondary. I do want Addison tonight, but between him and Mostert, I'm going to go Mostert. I do want Addison in my lineup, but I got to go Mostert. What's going on, Jay? Good to see you, man. Walker or Madison tonight? I would probably go Walker. Well, I am not crazy about Madison's matchup this week on a short week. I'm not in love with Walker's matchup either. The Lions defense is they pose a challenge now. They're solid, but I'll take the player who's not on short, who doesn't have to play on a short week. And pretty much that's all it comes down to for me. Sometimes I get burned by this. Sometimes I overthink a short week and a Thursday night matchup and just forget that these guys are some of the best athletes in the world, and the amount of rest they need doesn't always matter. But I mean, it's hard to look at those two situations and think to myself, I prefer Madison on the road on a short week over Kenneth Walker, also on the road, but a full week to rest, recover, and have a full game plan, or have time for his team to be able to put a whole game plan together. I would go Walker. They're both close. Neither are great matchups. I'll take the guy who's got a full week of rest in Walker. And then I see the question here about some of the running backs. Benching between Montgomery, Etienne, Pierce, and Algier. Probably Algier. Probably Algier. It's tough. It's close, but I expect Algier to remain involved. But the Falcons are going to have to throw the ball a little bit more this week. They are not going to be able to just run the ball as much as they want to, with a touchdown lead over the Carolina Panthers, who was probably going to be one of the bottom 3 or 4 teams in the NFC this year. They got Green Bay coming in, and Green Bay looked great week 1. They look like they're a much more competitive team. They're definitely a much more competitive team than the Panthers. The Falcons are going to have to, they're going to have to get other guys a little bit more involved. Kyle Pitts, who I think led the team with like 45 receiving yards. Drake London didn't have a catch. Those guys need to get more involved if the Falcons want to have a shot in this game. I would think those touches come from Algier and go to London and Pitts, because there's no way you can take Bijan off the field any more than you already are. Yeah, Montgomery, Etienne, Pierce. I would fire up those guys. Should you trade St. Brown for Josh Jacobs? I don't know that I would. I mean, I see you're loaded at wide receiver, but I'm a little concerned about Josh Jacobs this year just because I don't know how good the Raiders are going to be on offense. I don't know how good they're going to be as a team. I know they won. They beat Denver on the road. I mean, Amon-Ra's got top 7 or 8 upside on the season as a wide receiver. Jacobs does too at the running back spot, but I mean, his ceiling feels kind of capped. I would probably aim higher right now. And I know that sounds crazy to say because it doesn't get much higher than Josh Jacobs when you consider what he did last season, but it's a new season. And I like Josh Jacobs. I have Josh Jacobs in one of my dynasty leagues. I'm not, and that's a team I expect to compete with. But if I could get, I mean, a little different, but dynasty, but even in redraft, if I could get Amon-Ra for Josh Jacobs, let me say this the other way around. So it's on, so it's coming from your perspective. If I'm giving away Amon-Ra St. Brown for Josh Jacobs, me personally, I feel like I'm losing from a value perspective in that trade. It's fine to try to move Amon-Ra, given the other options that you have, but I would aim higher. I would aim higher than Josh Jacobs. Look, I would ask for Saquon. You're talking like guys that were drafted in the same range. Late first, early second. At the very least, get like Jahmyr Gibbs, who I do think is a good investment for the rest of this season. Yeah, I mean, I would ask for Saquon. I would start with Saquon. If Amon-Ra is the guy that you're moving, if you're going to trade a running back who was consistently drafted late first, early second round, get a running back drafted in that same range. I'm just realizing I forgot to share this stream with my Discord folks. So that's on me. I can see if any of them are still around. That's on me. If you're not in my Discord, if you're interested in keeping the conversation going so that you can ask questions whenever they come up, second link in the description of this video. I'm not always available. I make myself available a little bit more to the members, of course. If the members ask questions, I will prioritize getting back to them. I will, converse in there with the general public as well. But the idea is to help each other out in those instances when I'm not around. If you're interested in joining, and I'm going to let them know as well. And then I can get back to a couple more questions if there are any others that come up. There we go. Breece Hall or Madison? Breece, easily. He went nuts on Monday night. Limited touches. Tough run defense. I know that they're playing another really good defense in Dallas. Maybe the best defense in the NFL. But Breece Hall is going to see more work this week. He's going to see more work as he continues on, as this season progresses. And it looks like he's ready to contribute in a big way sooner than I think any of us could have anticipated. I hope y'all listened. I told y'all, if anybody listened over the summer, I had Breece Hall listed as a low-end RB1 and a guy that I wanted at cost. I hope y'all grabbed him. I didn't nail every pick, but that's feeling like one that I got. I said, go get Breece. That one looks pretty good. Already popping off in a tough matchup, in a tough spot. He's going to be in another tough spot this week, but he blew up in a way where it's like, I feel confident about him now. Maybe he doesn't rip off an 80-yard run against a good defense in the Cowboys, but the Jets are going to run the football a ton now moving forward. Give me Breece. I'm not crazy about Madison. I'm not crazy about Madison this week. If you have no other clear-cut alternative at running back to go to, then by all means, fire up Alexander Madison. But on a short week against a good defensive front, the Eagles are hurting a little bit in the secondary, but their front four is still pretty good. They're hurting at linebacker too, actually, but they still have a good front four. It's going to make it difficult to run on them. Madison got, I think he got 14 or 15 total touches on Sunday in week 1. On a short week, he may not replicate that production or that volume. You might see Ty Chandler mix in a little bit more. When you factor all these things in on a short week, going on the road against what should still be a good overall defensive unit, especially at home, I'm not crazy about Madison this week. Really not. So I would go Breece. I'm going Breece over a lot of players this week. I would go Breece over every player except for maybe like 12 to 15 names across all positions. Very excited that he seems to be back much sooner than expected. Dude, I have bad dreams all the time about, like, I missed I just didn't set a starting lineup. Or I did something that like caused me to get kicked out of the league. Like I have weird dreams in general. I've been told that you can work on your dreams. You can like read certain books and start like different practices where you're like, these bad thoughts turn into more positive thoughts. Maybe I should like look into that shit because now fantasy has crept into like my subconscious and I'll wake up, I'm like, I didn't spend enough $5 on that player. And then I wake up and I'm like, that guy's not even relevant. I miss deadlines on things. It always happens. Yeah. And then of course you dream about like I'm getting blown out in some random matchup that for some reason I wasn't prepared for. Yep. You go through all those. They're not intrusive thoughts, but yeah, your subconscious like is cooking up worst case scenarios for you because this is what we care about. This is what we care about. All right. Inactives are rolling in. It looks like for Minnesota, the only still noteworthy one is center Garrett Bradbury. But Christian Darrisaw is active. Marcus Davenport is also active for the Vikings. Those are significant that those players are able to get in there. Darrisaw would have been a big loss for the Vikings if he wasn't able to go, but he's in there, helping to protect Kirk Cousins, helping to hopefully, pave the lane, so to speak, for Alexander Madison. But he's probably at less than 100% coming into a Thursday night game listed as questionable. For the Eagles, nothing outrageously unexpected here. Kenneth Gainwell, of course, ruled out. James Bradbury, Reed Blankenship, of course, ruled out. The Eagles will likely lean on DeAndre Swift tonight. What I'm curious to see is, does Boston Scott get into the game before Rashad Penny does? I don't think Rashad Penny can be considered. I'm not sure that Rashad Penny can be considered outside of like if you play in 16 or 18 team leagues, where, you know, you're more likely to have some guys that would be considered bottom of the barrel options in 10 and 12 team leagues, much closer to potential starting lineup in bigger, larger, deeper leagues. 16, 18 teams, yeah, maybe you roll the dice on Rashad Penny. Anything less, I don't think you can. I think you can fire up DeAndre Swift. I'm not advocating firing up Boston Scott. He's an RB5. But I wouldn't be surprised if he got into the game over Rashad Penny. Wouldn't surprise me. Would I start Swift over a guy? I can tell you right now, I'm not starting him over Javonte Williams. Khalil Herbert, Tutu Atwell, sure, fire up Swift, but not over Javonte. And you're welcome. Thanks for the thanks. I would start Javonte. I know that he didn't necessarily showcase any type of burst or explosiveness on Sunday, but the fact that he was out there at all, contributing as the 1A, I do think Javonte is a little bit closer than maybe we were thinking coming into the season, especially at the time of the injury last year. He got a good amount of work. I imagine, sounds like there were no reports or concerns about anything about as far as Javonte coming out of that game with anything. Sounds like he came out of that game unscathed, no issues. I'm firing him up with the Broncos at home again. It's another tough matchup against Washington, but he operated as the 1A. He should continue to see a good amount of work, good amount of usage, with that potentially being ramped up on a week-to-week basis. I am firing up Javonte over DeAndre Swift. That is a name where I'm saying, okay, if I'm between these two guys, then Swift stays on my bench for one more week. I know Swift is in a good spot theoretically with Gainwell on the pine, but I don't know. I feel like Boston Scott's going to get involved tonight. I'm very curious to see what type of work, if any, Rashad Penny gets. I don't think he can be started outside of deep leagues with legit, 18 team leagues with 10 or 12 spots in your starting lineup. Sure, fire up Rashad Penny, but other than that, I don't think I would. Boston Scott, I can't advise firing up. He's an RB5, maybe a fringe RB4. Does have a chance to get involved tonight on a short week with no Kenny Gainwell, but I wouldn't be banking on him. Again, maybe a 14-team league, 16-team league might be a little bit more likely. 10 and 12-team leagues, I can't advise Boston Scott, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was the RB2 behind DeAndre Swift. I think A.J. Brown hits his receiving prop tonight. I think it was around 73.5 yards. I would expect more at home. I think you can easily expect a 5-catch, 80-yard performance from A.J. Brown tonight, obviously with upside for more. I'll go ditto Devontae Smith. They're neck and neck as far as what you expect from those guys in the form of production. And I think the sneaky guy out of the backfield, it's not really sneaky, but the guy who's probably going to run a little bit more tonight is Jalen Hurts, to account for Gainwell being out tonight. Penny was a healthy scratch last week. Don't know what that's all about, but like when your options are DeAndre Swift and Boston Scott, I mean, Hurts is probably going to run a little bit more tonight. And I would expect Dallas Goedert. I think the Eagles passing attack as a whole bounces back a little bit tonight. Dallas Goedert is too good to get shut out. He got blanked in week 1, didn't catch a pass. I imagine that changes tonight, especially with, Marcus Davenport coming into this game less than 100% on the Vikings defense. I got to imagine Goddard gets more involved tonight. For the Vikings, I think TJ Hawkinson hits his catch prop. He had 8 catches last week, only for 35 yards, but 8 catches is a lot. I think it's currently sitting around 4.5. So yeah, I would expect Hawk to be able to corral 5 catches tonight, especially against those Eagles linebackers. They're not very strong. And they lost Nakobe Dean. He's on IR now for the next 4 games. So Hawkinson, you're firing up with all the confidence in the world. And obviously, there are going to be certain leagues and situations where it's a bit of a squeeze. But I do want to get Jordan Addison in my lineup as well if I can. James Bradbury out for the Eagles with a concussion. Reed Blankenship, the safety, out with an injury of his own. I think it's ribs, a rib injury. Regardless, Addison looks like he's in a good spot tonight. I don't care that KJ Osborne ran ahead of him last week as far as snaps and routes run. Addison was much more productive, caught 4 for 60 and a touch. I would think he's got a good opportunity to replicate similar numbers in a matchup where he should continue to see one-on-one coverage. And he's going to be dealing with maybe the Eagles' 3rd or even 4th options at cornerback tonight with no James Bradbury. So while there are a lot of running backs that I would probably prefer over Addison, even in full PPR, I do think he's a very viable upside wide receiver 3 with plenty of opportunity to finish as a wide receiver 2 this week. I think he finished as a wide receiver 1 last week, maybe like the lowest end. I think wide receiver 2 production is certainly fair. And then as far as Garrett Wilson, I don't see too many other questions in this chat, so I might shut this down shortly unless anybody else has anything that they want to talk about. I will take start-sit questions as it pertains to the game. If you miss me before kickoff, you can hit the Discord. If you've got any start-sit questions that pertain to this game that involve players for this game, Eagles or Vikings players, I'll make a point to get to it in the Discord if you miss me between now and kickoff. So yeah, join the Discord. As far as Garrett Wilson, I mean, you're starting him, I guess. I think you still have to, at least for one more week. But I mean, he's got it's brutal, right? It's absolutely terrible what just happened to Garrett Wilson, but he's a low end wide receiver too. He's a low end. Garrett Wilson's a low end wide receiver too. I think you have to start him based on where you drafted him. I think you have to start Garrett Wilson based on where you drafted him, but you can't expect more than, he had 5 for 40 and a touchdown on an amazing catch Monday night. I mean, now they go up against maybe the best defense in the league, the Cowboys. I mean, yeah, Garrett Wilson is trending toward wide receiver 3 potential. It is a damn shame what has potentially happened to Garrett Wilson's season. Sucks. Yeah, it sucks. You have to probably start him. You're hoping for low end wide receiver 2 production at this point. Iron, so are your options Dak, Cousins, and Geno? I mean, I guess I would go Cousins and Geno. If those are your options, I would go Cousins and Geno. Dak should have better numbers than he did last week. He didn't have to do anything last week. The Cowboys had that game in hand early. He should have to do a little bit more this week against a good defense in the Jets, but it's a really bad matchup. I would just go Cousins and Geno. Oh, it's 1 QB, then Cousins. I would just go Cousins. His track record in primetime is terrible. but he's probably your best option. He's got good weapons to throw the ball to. And Philly is down a couple of guys in their secondary, so the matchup is a little softer for Kirk Cousins. I would lean Cousins despite his bad track record in primetime games. I think you just grin and bear it. Given your options, you hold your nose, you start Kirk Cousins, and you hope for the best. I would just play Cousins. Drop Gabe for not Zay, but maybe Brian Robinson. I mean, if he's it's like, I don't know who your other guys on your bench are. I don't know who, how strong your wide receiver or running back depth is. So I don't know that I can fully answer that, but in a vacuum, I would probably keep Gabe unless I really needed a running back. And then fine, I would drop Brian Robinson. If my drop Gabe for Brian Robinson. If my running back depth is weak and my wide receiver depth is stout, is really strong, then sure, grab Brian Robinson. If it's 50-50 or neutral, I would probably just keep Gabe. We'll probably just keep Gabe. All right. I think that about does it for me for tonight. Nice little hang for about an hour leading up to Thursday night. But probably going to go ahead and shut this down here shortly. Again, one more time for you guys. Start, sit, help on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern. Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern. That's when I'll be able to best answer your start, sit questions. I did take any that pertain to the Thursday night game tonight, but if it's just start, sit for Sunday, for the Sunday games, or that includes Monday Night Football, of course, the best thought process I can give you will be over the weekend after Friday practice reports clear. Plus, players get retroactively added to injury reports all the time. Things can change as far as analysis at the drop of a hat. You guys know this from playing fantasy for years. These weird, fluky things can happen. They do happen. And so we have to be prepared to account for them in the most timely manner that we can. So start, sit questions. Best time to ask them are Saturdays and Sundays. 6 p.m. Eastern Saturday, Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern. I'll be able to give you your best information then. If you can't make those, join our Discord. Second link in the description of this video. I will give you my best answer when I am able to. Members get priority. I will answer the members first and foremost, and at a faster turnaround time, most likely. But I will try to get to the general public in general as well over there. And of course, the community there, you can bounce questions and thoughts off of each other as well. And that's what makes it so great. Thank you guys. Enjoy the game tonight. Let's all get some good performances for anybody in our starting lineup to get this week kicked off the right way. And I will see you guys this weekend. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy the game.